Imagine a man whose face looked as if he had just returned from the graveyard after burying his most beloved person. A man whose tears never dried and whose heart never stopped trembling. Looking at him, it seemed as if the raging fires of hell were created only for him, and he was constantly terrified of that fire. When he spoke, it felt like a warner had come from the hereafter to warn the people of the world. He was not a companion, but he was the last lighthouse of the era of the companions. He was that great man who, even whilst born in the golden age of Muslim wealth and power, chose for himself a piece of dry bread, a little water and a cloak of fear. He is the leader of the Tabi'een, the Imam of the Muslims, Hazrat Hasan Al Basri. Today, we will brush off the dust of history and uncover the story of a magnificent life, a story that can melt even hearts as hard as stone. A life that teaches us how to abandon the illusion of this colorful world and sacrifice ourselves for the love of Allah. Let us go back 1400 years to that holy time where this story begins. It was the year 21 Hijri, the caliphate of the second caliph of Islam, Amirul Mu'mineen Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, was in progress. The holy air of Medina was scented with the fragrance of revelation. The streets of Medina were alive with the footsteps of the noble companions. In such a blessed time, a beautiful baby was born in a special house in Medina. The baby's father, Yasar, was a freed slave, and his mother was Kyra. But this child's identity was not limited to his parents. His birth was tied to a fortune that very few people are destined to have. The child's mother, Kyra, was no ordinary woman. She was the special maidservant of the prophets, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Beloved wife, Ummul Mu'mineen, Hazrat Salama radiallahu anha. Just think for a moment. Little Hassan was growing up in the very house that held the memories of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The house where the light of revelation descended, and where Jibril alayhi salam used to visit. This was no ordinary upbringing. Reliable history books bear witness to a miraculous event. When baby Hassan was very small, his mother Kyra would sometimes go out for errands. The baby would cry from hunger. Hearing that cry, the ocean of mercy, Ummul Mu'mineen Hazrat Salama radiallahu anha could not remain still. She would pick the baby up, hug him with great affection to her chest, and to comfort him, she would place her blessed breast in the baby's mouth. By the infinite power of Allah, milk would flow in the breasts of the Prophet's wife, and this fortunate child would calm down by drinking the blessed milk of the mother of the believers. It was because of drinking this milk that the special wisdom and prudence of the Prophet's family spread into the body and mind of Hasan Al Basri, which the world witnessed in his later life. His childhood days were passed among those golden people of Medina. One day, the Caliph of the Muslims, Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, visited the house of Salama. His eyes fell upon the beautiful baby Hassan. Seeing the innocent face of the child, Umar's heart melted. He went close to the child, placed his hand on his small head, and raised his hands to the court of Allah, making a prayer that became written in gold in the pages of history. Umar said, "O Allah, grant this child deep understanding of the religion and fiqh, and make him beloved to the people." The prayer of the Amirul Mu'mineen was answered quickly. In later life, when Hasan Al Basri spoke, it seemed as if a fountain of wisdom was flowing from his mouth. Millions of people would become mesmerized by his words, and the fear of Allah would awaken in their hearts. The Prophet's mosque, Masjid al-Nabawi, was his primary school. There, he received lessons on the Quran and Hadith directly from the mouths of the companions. He completed the memorization of the Holy Quran by the age of just 14. He saw with his own eyes the caliphate of the third caliph, Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu. He witnessed the bravery and wisdom of the fourth caliph, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu. His character was formed by seeing the living actions of the companions. He watched how the companions prayed, how they spoke, and how they considered the world to be insignificant. This direct observation built a strong fortress of faith in his heart. But destiny had other plans. He had to leave the peaceful and holy environment of Medina for a new land. Around the year 37 Hijri, during the turbulent times following the Battle of Siffin, Hasan Al Basri's family migrated from Medina to the city of Basra in Iraq. By then, he was no longer a child, but a spirited young man. Basra was then a city of new possibilities, but also a fertile ground for trials. On one hand, centers of knowledge were being built there. On the other hand, political instability and the abundance of worldly wealth were consuming people. It was not easy to adapt to the noisy life of Basra coming from the quiet environment of Medina. But Hasan al Basri was made of different material. His goal was fixed, the pleasure of Allah and salvation in the hereafter. Coming to Basra, he completely separated himself from the worldly noise. When people at the beginning of their youth are lost in colorful dreams, Hasan al Basri was searching for the depth of truth. While staying in Basra, he met some companions who had participated in the Battle of Badr. Hasan al Basri himself described, "I met 70 Badri companions. Their clothes were very simple, patched, but their faith was as firm as a mountain. I saw them in such a state that you are not as crazy about gathering worldly wealth as they were desperate to abandon the world. To them, the world was as insignificant as the dust under their feet." The company of these Sahaba turned the course of his life, especially when the famous companion Hazrat Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu stayed in Basra. Hasan al Basri stuck to him like a shadow. From the servant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he learned humility, fear of Allah, and the unique taste of worship. He also acquired knowledge from companions like Hazrat Imran bin Hussein, Hazrat Mughira bin Shuba, and Hazrat Abu Darda radiallahu anhum. He did not just listen to their words, he understood their breath, their silence, and the language of their eyes. During these days of youth, an event completely overturned his world of thought. One day, he was passing by the market of Basra. He saw people fighting over worldly wealth. Someone was lying for a dirham. Someone was cheating his brother for a small profit. Seeing this scene, he stopped dead in his tracks. He remembered the verse of the Quran, "O mankind, indeed the promise of Allah is true, so let not the worldly life deceive you." From that moment, he made a firm promise. He decided he would swim against the tide. Where everyone was busy with the world, he would be busy with the hereafter. Where everyone was laughing, he would cry, remembering his own sins. Thus began the journey of a new Hasan al Basri, who became a Zahid, or ascetic. This change was not limited to his heart. It appeared in his outward behavior as well. The cheerful young man slowly became serious. A look of melancholy and deep thought always remained on his face. People would ask him, "Oh, Abu Sa'id, why are you always so worried?" The answer he gave chills the blood. He would say, "I am worried about that fire whose fuel will be men and stones. Have I been able to ensure that I will be saved from that fire?" Hasan al Basri's fear or thoughtfulness was not a temporary emotion. Rather, it was the permanent state of his soul. His contemporaries used to say, "We have seen Hasan al Basri for 40 long years, but in these 40 years, we never saw him laugh heartily. His smile was mild, but his eyes always held an unknown apprehension. When he woke up in the morning, his face looked as if he had received news of a great disaster. And when he returned home in the evening, it looked as if he was carrying news of a death." One day, a man gathered the courage to ask him, "O Abu Sa'id, what is the reason for your condition? Everything in the world is going normally." Hasan al Basri sighed and said, "How can a person laugh whose death is chasing him, whose destination is either hell or paradise, and who does not know what his final address will be?" These words were not just empty phrases. It was the deep belief of his heart. He believed with his soul that for a believer, this world is not a place of comfort and luxury, but a testing ground. His detachment from the world, or zuhd, was so strong that he considered the glamour of the world to be trash. When the wealthy people and rulers of Basra walked around wearing expensive silk clothes, Hasan Al Basri would wrap himself in a patched woolen cloak, but he looked more majestic in that patched attire than any ruler of Basra did in their royal robes, because his nobility was not in his clothes. It was in his taqwa, God consciousness. He used to say, "O son of Adam, you are nothing but a collection of days. When one day passes from your life, a part of your existence falls away." This value of time kept him busy in the remembrance of Allah every single moment. He never stored food for tomorrow. He would get by with whatever was in his house. If anyone asked him about tomorrow's food, he would say, "The Allah who fed me today, if he keeps me alive tomorrow, he will feed me tomorrow as well." The fame of his unattached lifestyle spread far and wide. People from distant places rushed to him just to see his face and hear his advice. When he sat in the central mosque of Basra, a strange scene would unfold. Thousands of people would listen to his words in pin-drop silence. There was no unnecessary talk in his gathering, no joking or laughter. There was only talk of the hereafter, talk of paradise and hell. When he described the fire of hell, the sound of the audience weeping would make the walls of the mosque tremble. The effect of his words was so intense that often people would faint hearing his sermon. What was the reason for this? The reason was that he practiced in his own life what he preached. He never gave any advice that he did not follow himself. He used to say, "When words of knowledge come only from the tongue, they reach only the ears. But when words come from the heart, they go straight and strike the hearts of men." He was a bottomless ocean of knowledge. Tafsir, hadith, fiqh, and spirituality, he had free access to all branches. But his knowledge was not just bookish learning. He had blended knowledge with action. In his time, many people would engage in arguments over small issues of fiqh. Someone would come and ask him, "Sir, what is the ruling on such and such act? How much water can be used for wudu?" Hasan Al Basri would then scold them, saying, "You are arguing about rulings, yet there is no fear of Allah in your hearts. Do you know who a faqih is? A true faqih is that person who is unattached to the world, eager for the hereafter, has deep wisdom regarding religion, and is always busy in the worship of his Lord. A person whose neighbor is safe from his harm and who does not destroy the honor of people." He explained to people that knowing halal and haram is not the only fiqh. Rather, leaving sin out of fear of Allah is the real fiqh. There was no distinction between rich and poor among those who came to him. From the lowest class of society to great rulers, everyone knocked at his door. Once a man came to him and said, "O Abu Sa'id, I want to marry off my daughter. Proposals have come from many places. Rulers and wealthy men have sent proposals. Give me advice, to whom should I marry my daughter?" Hasan Al Basri gave an answer in a moment that is a huge lesson, even for today's society. He said, "Marry your daughter to a boy who fears Allah, because if he fears Allah and loves your daughter, he will honor her. And if he does not love her, he will not oppress her because he fears Allah." This was his mindset. He did not look at wealth or lineage. He looked at taqwa. These gatherings of Hasan Al Basri were factories for building humans. His student was Umar bin Abdul Aziz, who later became known as one of the greatest rulers in the history of Islam, and the fifth rightly guided caliph. The letters and advice of Hasan Al Basri were the main influence behind the character formation of Umar bin Abdul Aziz. He did not flatter rulers. Rather, he did not hesitate a bit to speak the truth to their faces. His belief was, he who has known Allah fears no one but Allah. People of his time took sin very lightly. But Hasan Al Basri explained the difference between a believer and a hypocrite very beautifully. He used to say, "A believer considers sin to be as if he is sitting under a mountain, and at any moment the mountain will collapse upon him. And a hypocrite or sinner considers sin to be as if a fly flew past his nose, and he swatted it away with his hand," meaning, to him, even a small sin was like a mountain. He taught his students not to look at the size or volume of the sin, but rather to look at whose disobedience you are committing. You are disobeying that great being who created you, who is giving you sustenance. When this feeling awakened in someone's heart, They could no longer step towards sin. Sitting in the mosque of Basra, he did not just give religious sermons, but also highlighted the inconsistencies of society. Once he saw people engaging in backbiting or gossip about one another, he stopped them and said, "Would you like to burn your own houses with fire?" Everyone said no. He said, "Backbiting consumes good deeds faster than fire consumes wood. If I were to backbite anyone, I would backbite my mother, because my mother is the most deserving of my good deeds." These words would strike the conscience of people like a whip. People would correct themselves coming into his company. Every word of his, every piece of advice was the essence of the Quran and Sunnah. He would recite verses of the Quran and cry in such a way as if the verse had just been revealed upon him. When he read that verse of Surah Al-Hadid, "Has the time not come for those who believed that their hearts should become humble at the remembrance of Allah?" It seemed as if his heart would burst. In this way, Hasan Al Basri, rahimahullah, took a place in the hearts of the people of Basra, simultaneously as a teacher, a spiritual guide, and a social reformer. But the greatest test of his life was still remaining. For the crime of speaking the truth, he had to stand before the greatest tyrant ruler of the time. Where great swords bowed down, Hasan Al Basri was a fearless soldier all alone. The story of that terrifying chapter and his immense courage makes the hair on one's body stand on end. At that time, the governance of Iraq was taken over by one of the most controversial and cruel rulers in history, Hajjaj bin Yusuf. Hajjaj was a ruler whose sword was always stained with the blood of Muslims. His name struck such terror that tigers and buffaloes would drink water at the same bank, and the souls of great warriors would tremble. At his slightest signal, the heads of thousands of people would be severed from their bodies. The scholars and common people of Basra were living in extreme terror. No one had the courage to protest any injustice of Hajjaj. But Hasan al Basri was different. No fear found a place in his heart except the fear of Allah. He knew that hiding the truth is also a type of hypocrisy. Once, to show off the arrogance of his power, Hajjaj bin Yusuf built a huge and magnificent palace in a place called Wasit. When the construction of the palace was finished, he invited the dignitaries and scholars of Basra so that they would come, see the beauty of his palace, praise it, and become more loyal to his power. People went in groups to see that palace. Hasan al Basri also arrived there, but he did not go to see the palace. He went to show people the path of truth. He saw that people were mesmerized by the vastness and craftsmanship of the palace. They were full of praise for Hajjaj. Seeing this scene, Hasan al Basri could not remain silent. Amidst the crowd of thousands and in the presence of Hajjaj himself, he began to speak in a loud voice. He said, "We saw what this sinner has built. Pharaoh also built massive structures, but Allah destroyed Pharaoh and mixed his palace with the dust. O people, do not be deceived by the glamour of this palace made of stones and mud. This palace will not take you to paradise. Rather, its builder will be a vessel of destruction before Allah." His fiery speech struck the people present like a thunderbolt. Everyone cowered in fear. They thought today is Hasan al Basri's last day. Who has the courage to say such words standing in front of Hajjaj? But Hasan al Basri did not stop. He kept speaking the truth fluently. Some well-wishers present tried to stop him, whispering, "O Abu Sa'id, it is enough, say no more. Hajjaj will kill you." Hasan al Basri looked at them and said in a calm voice, "Allah has taken this pledge from the scholars, that they will reveal the truth to people and will not hide it." After this event, Hajjaj bin Yusuf became furious with rage. He scolded his courtiers, saying, "Shame on you! A slave of Basra stood in front of me and insulted me, and none of you protested against him." Immediately he ordered, "Bring Hasan al Basri to my court at once. I will cool my liver today by killing him." The next day, Hajjaj's court was prepared. The executioner was kept ready. The sword was sharpened to a shine, and the leather sheet spread for executions was laid out. Soldiers were sent to call Hasan al Basri. When Hasan al Basri received the news, he was not the least bit agitated. He performed wudu calmly and set out for the royal palace with the soldiers. While entering the palace, his lips were moving slightly. He was whispering something. Everyone present in the court was waiting with bated breath for when Hasan's head would be severed. Hasan Al Basri walked with slow steps and extreme gravity and stood before Hajjaj. There was not a trace of fear on his face. Rather, a light nor was radiating from his face. Just at that moment, a miraculous event occurred. The Hajjaj, who was roaring like a tiger, his face changed as soon as he saw Hasan Al Basri. His anger turned to water in an instant. Allah Rabbul Alameen put fear and respect for his beloved servant into the heart of the tyrant. Hajjaj shifted on his throne and, surprising everyone, said with extreme respect, "O Abu Sa'id, come sit here beside me." Everyone present could not believe their own eyes. The executioner standing with the sword was also dumbfounded. Hasan Al Basri went and sat beside Hajjaj. Hajjaj began to ask him about various complex issues of religion and fiqh. Hasan Al Basri answered every question with extreme calmness and wisdom. Seeing the depth of his knowledge, Hajjaj became fascinated. At the end of the discussion, Hajjaj said, "O Abu Sa'id, you are undoubtedly the leader of the scholars." Then he applied perfume to him and bid him farewell with respect. When Hasan Al Basri was coming out of the court, Hajjaj's chief doorkeeper followed him. He stopped Hasan Al Basri and said, "O Imam, I have been serving Hajjaj for a long time. I know his temper. Today he called you only to kill you. There is no doubt about it. But when you entered, I saw your lips moving. What was that prayer you recited due to which, by the will of Allah, Hajjaj's anger turned to water and he showed you such respect?" Hasan Al Basri then taught him that secret dua, which is like a shield for a believer in times of danger. He said, "I was then saying to Allah, O my provision in times of distress and my companion in loneliness, make Hajjaj's anger cool and peaceful for me, just as you made the fire cool and peaceful for Ibrahim alayhi salam." Allah Rabbul Alameen had accepted his prayer. This event proves that no power in the world can harm the one with whom Allah is present. Hasan Al Basri did not fear Hajjaj because he knew Hajjaj's power was only over the body, but the master of the soul is Allah. This fearless mentality set him apart from everyone else of his time. However, his conflict with Hajjaj did not end here. Hasan Al Basri knew that if the ruler goes astray, the whole society becomes corrupted. So he always tried to correct the rulers. Once a man asked Hasan Al Basri, "Hajjaj bin Yusuf is committing much oppression. Should we rebel against him? Should we fight against him with swords?" Hasan Al Basri then gave a historic and far-sighted answer. He forbade creating chaos, fitna, out of emotion. He said, "No, do not rebel, because Hajjaj is a punishment or torment from Allah. Allah has imposed such a ruler because of our own sins. The punishment of Allah cannot be removed with swords. Rather, it must be removed through repentance, tawbah, seeking forgiveness, istighfar, and weeping before Allah. If you want to remove the punishment with swords, remember, Allah's punishment is stronger than your swords." His stance was extremely balanced. On one hand, he spoke the truth to the tyrant ruler's face. On the other hand, he hated creating bloodshed or civil war within the ummah. He believed that the change of society begins with the change of the individual self. If people are good, Allah will grant them a good ruler. Every step of Hasan Al Basri's life was measured. He never performed worship to show off. His crying, his fear, his courage, everything was solely for Allah. And this ikhlas or sincerity is what reached him to the maqam of wilayah, the highest peak of friendship with Allah. The people of his time used to say, "We have seen many scholars, but we have seen no one like Hasan, whose words and actions are exactly the same." When he described hell, seeing his weeping, it seemed as if he himself was standing on the edge of the fire of hell. The main source of Hasan Al Basri's fearless courage was a constant truth rooted in the deepest province of his heart, the fear of hell. He did not fear any sword of the world, because the scene of that terrible punishment of the hereafter always floated before his eyes. To him, hell was not a topic of a story. Rather, it was as true as his breath. He felt as if the fire of hell was burning right under his feet. When hell was discussed in his gathering, his condition became such that it seemed he could see the raging flames with his own eyes. One day he was sitting among his students. Suddenly he burst into tears. The students asked, "Oh Imam, why are you crying?" He said, "I fear that Allah might throw me into hell because of some major sin of mine and say, 'Let Hasan go to hell.' I do not care about him." This was his humility and fear of Allah. He always used to say, "A believer wakes up in the morning in a worried state and reaches the evening in a worried state because he lives between two fears. When his past life, he does not know if Allah has forgiven his past sins. 2, his remaining life, he does not know what destructive deeds he might get involved in within the future." Hasan Al Basri's way of thinking broke the misconceptions of many people. In the Muslim society of that time, at that time, there was a group of people who thought, "We have recited the kalima. We are the ummah of the Prophet, so whatever we do, paradise is guaranteed for us." Hasan al Basri burst this balloon of false hope. He warned them, saying, "You hope for paradise, yet you do not do the deeds for paradise? Know that there is a difference between hope and foolishness. Some people have abandoned good deeds, relying on Allah's forgiveness, and have indulged in sins. They say, 'We have a good opinion of Allah.' They are lying. If they had a good opinion of Allah, they would certainly have done good deeds for Allah." He portrayed the difference between a believer and a hypocrite very excellently. One of his famous quotes is worth etching in the heart. He said, "A believer does good deeds and yet remains afraid of Allah, wondering if his deed was accepted. And a hypocrite commits sins and yet considers himself safe, thinking nothing will happen to him." He taught people that true faith is not just about hope, nor just about fear. Faith is a state between hope and fear. One day a man came to Hasan al Basri and said, "O Abu Sa'id, I want to pray tahajjud at night, but I cannot wake up. I perform wudu, get ready and sleep, but still my sleep does not break. What is the reason for this?" Hasan al Basri looked at him and gave an answer that only a spiritual doctor could give. He said, "Your sins have tied you down with chains. Do not disobey Allah during the day. Then Allah will grant you the ability, tawfiq, to stand before Him at night. Because standing in tahajjud is a matter of great honor, and Allah does not grant this honor to sinners." Every moment of Hasan al Basri's life was a preparation for the hereafter. He never laughed loudly. Once he saw a young man bursting into loud laughter. He went to that young man and said, "Son, have you crossed the Pul Sirat bridge over hell?" The young man answered, "No." He asked again, "Have you come to know whether your destination is paradise or hell?" The young man said, "No." Hasan al Basri then said, "How can a person who does not know what his final outcome will be laugh so heartily?" It is said that the young man was never seen laughing loudly again after that. Hasan al Basri's words influenced people's hearts so much that it radically changed their lifestyles. To him, the world was like a broken boat that could sink at any time. He used to say, "I have seen such people, the Sahaba, to whom this world was more insignificant than the dirt under your feet. You get happy receiving a small part of the world today, and you become stone still with grief if you lose a small part. But they would not be happy if they received anything of the world, nor would they be sad if anything was lost." He also said, "The world is a dream, and death is waking up, and the field of resurrection is our real address." These advices of Hasan al Basri were not just for common people, but were a great warning for rulers as well. When Caliph Umar bin Abdul Aziz received the responsibility of the caliphate, he wrote a letter to Hasan al Basri. "Give me some advice," in reply. Hasan al Basri wrote to him, "O Amirul Mumineen, consider the world as if it is a snake. Its touch is very soft, but its venom is extremely deadly. Stay away from this snake. Do not lose the eternal happiness of the hereafter by getting lost in the momentary pleasure of the world." He always called people to be fikir, or thoughtful. He used to say, "1 hour of deep thought is better than a whole night of voluntary worship," because thoughtfulness opens the eyes of the heart. When a person thinks that one day he has to be alone in a dark grave, insects will eat his body, then it becomes impossible for him to commit sin. Hasan Al Basri wanted every Muslim to reach this level of fikir. His life was a living Quran. When he recited verses of the Quran, it seemed he was talking to Allah. Seeing his tears, it seemed he had lost a loved one. But these tears were not for anything of the world. They were tears of love and fear for Allah. He used to say, "The eye that sheds tears in fear of Allah, the fire of hell will not touch that eye." In this way, Hasan Al Basri taught the Ummah that Islam is not just the name of some customs or rituals. Islam is the belief of the heart and complete surrender of oneself before Allah. His teaching was live in the world like a traveler. Because your real home is not here, your real home is in paradise. But to go to that paradise, one must cross a thorny path and must keep the provision of Taqwa with them. Hasan Al Basri, rahimahullah, believed that man's greatest enemy is not any human or jinn. Rather, man's greatest enemy is his own ghafla or negligence. People forget that every breath is taking them one step closer to death. He did not see time as just the hands of a clock. He viewed time as the capital of life. He used to say, "O son of Adam, you are merely a collection of days. When a day passes, a part of your life falls away. And when parts of life fall away, it is only a matter of time before the whole life ends." These words were like warnings. He saw people bargaining in the market for trivial worldly things, yet they had no concern that their lifespan was running out. One day he attended a funeral prayer. When everyone was leaving after the burial, he remained standing beside the grave. He asked a man with him, "What do you think? If this dead person got the chance to return to the world today, would he commit sins again? Or would he stay immersed in the worship of Allah day and night?" The man replied, "Undoubtedly he would not commit sins anymore. He would only do good deeds." Then Hasan Al Basri sighed and said, "He will not get the chance to return. His opportunity is over. But you are still alive. You utilize that opportunity which he has lost. Live your life as if you have just returned from the grave." This was his method of teaching. He derived lessons of the hereafter from every scene. Hasan Al Basri's worship was hidden from the public eye. He used to say, "The deed done in secret carries 70 times more status than the deed done in public." He taught people that the relationship with Allah must be completely personal. In the darkness of the night, when everyone is deep in sleep, the believing servant will stand on the prayer mat and talk to his Lord. Hasan Al Basri used to say, "Those who stand in tahajjud at night, their faces become the brightest during the day." Someone asked, "Why?" He said, "Because they spent time in seclusion with the merciful Allah in the darkness of the night. So Allah clothed their bodies with the radiance of His own nur. When trials, corruption and confusion raised their heads in His time, He was the sleepless God of truth." Especially at that time, an extremist group called the Khawarij had emerged who would declare Muslims as disbelievers, kafir, over trivial matters and kill them. Hasan Al Basri took a strict stance against this extremism. He hated becoming a fanatic out of emotion. He said, "Religion is moderation, neither excess nor negligence." He explained to the youth that jihad does not mean just holding a sword, rather fighting against one's own desires. Nafs is the greatest jihad. Because of his balanced teachings, thousands of youths in Basra were saved from misguidance. How intense the fear of hell was in Hasan Al Basri's heart can be clearly understood from one incident. One day he was fasting. When the time for iftar approached, a glass of cold water was placed before him. He took the glass in his hand. Just as he was about to put the water to his mouth, suddenly he remembered a verse of the Quran where the people of hell will ask the people of paradise for water and say, "Pour upon us some water or from whatever Allah has provided you." Surah Al-Araf 50. As soon as he remembered this verse, the glass of water fell from his hand. He screamed and burst into tears and fainted. Even after regaining consciousness, he continued to cry for a long time. Seeing his weeping, It felt as if he could hear the wailing of the people of hell with his own ears. He said, "How can I drink water in peace? Whereas I do not know if this water will be the drink of paradise for me or turn into the pus of hell." This spiritual state took him to such a height that his prayers were accepted in the court of Allah. Once a blind man of Basra came to him and said, "O Abu Sa'id, I am blind. It is very difficult to move around. Pray to Allah that He restores my eyesight." Hasan Al Basri initially did not agree, saying, "Have patience, you will get its reward in the hereafter." But the man became insistent and started crying. Then Hasan Al Basri prayed for him. By the infinite mercy of Allah, the man's eyesight returned. But Hasan Al Basri did not like to reveal these karamat or miraculous powers. He always kept himself hidden. He used to say, "Miracles are not a big issue. The real issue is remaining steadfast on faith, istiqamah." He always taught people to be content with little, or qana'at. He used to say, "He who has the wealth of contentment in his heart is truly rich. And he who has greed in his heart will remain poor, even if he gets the whole world." There was a reflection of this in his own life too. The furniture in his house consisted of a palm leaf mat, a water pot and a pillow. He used to say, "The example of a believer in the world is like that sheep, which its owner has taken out to graze. It eats a little grass from there and drinks water, then returns home again. It does not build any mansion there." Even towards the end of his life, his warnings and advice did not stop. He always used to say, "You did not see the era of the Sahaba, but I saw it. What you call miserliness, they called thrift. And what you call generosity, they called wastefulness. Their morning began with the thought of the hereafter, and your morning begins with the thought of earning the..." Well, he would say these words with such compassion that stony hearts would melt. He was a huge mirror for the ummah, standing in front of which people could see their true faces. Hasan Al Basri's, rahimahullah, life was not limited only to worship. Rather, he had to confront one of the most complex intellectual crises in the history of Islam. As the Muslim empire expanded, Greek philosophy and non-Arab thoughts were entering Muslim society. People were moving away from simple faith and getting lost in the maze of logic and philosophy. Hasan Al Basri was an unshakable lighthouse in the face of that storm, who tried to remove this confusion with the knowledge of revelation. His gathering was open for seekers of knowledge. But it was in this very gathering that one of the major schisms in the history of Islam occurred. One day in Hasan Al Basri's class, a man came and asked, "O Imam, in our time, a group of people has appeared who consider a committer of major sins, kabira guna, to be a kafir, the Khawarij. Again, there is another group who says, if there is faith, sin does no harm, the Murji'ah. Which opinion is correct between these two? What is the status of a major sinner?" Hasan Al Basri fell into deep thought hearing the question. He was preparing to answer. Just at that moment, one of his students, named Wasil bin Atta, suddenly spoke up. "In my opinion, a major sinner is neither a believer nor a kafir. Rather, he is in a position between these two states." Saying this, Wasil bin Atta went to a pillar of the mosque without Hasan Al Basri's permission, sat separately, and started propagating his new doctrine, gathering some people around him. Hasan Al Basri was extremely pained seeing this scene. He sighed and said, "Wasil has withdrawn from us, itazala ana Wasil." From that day, a new deviant sect named Mu'tazila, or the Separatists, was born in the history of Islam. Hasan Al Basri, however, did not abuse them or throw them out of the mosque. He refuted them through logic and verses of the Quran. He proved that a person who commits a major sin does not become a kafir. Rather, he remains a fasiq or sinful believer, and his outcome depends on the mercy of Allah because of his calm and scholarly confrontation. The followers of the Sunnah were saved from a huge confusion at that time. Not just religious fitna, but his pen was sharper than a sword against political instability and the luxury of rulers, especially when Umar bin Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah, was elected caliph. Hasan Al Basri's role was like that of a guardian. Umar bin Abdul Aziz wrote to him, "O Imam, inform me about the qualities of a just ruler." The long letter Hasan Al Basri sent in reply is still considered a priceless document of political science today. He wrote, "O Amirul Mu'mineen, know that a just ruler is like that shepherd who protects his flock from tigers and bears, finds good grazing ground for them, and saves them from sun and rain. O Amirul Mu'mineen, you are an intermediary between Allah and the servant, who listens to Allah's command and conveys it to the servant. Do not be such that Allah gave you power to help the weak, and you yourself oppress the weak." Hasan al Basri further wrote to him, "O Amirul Mu'mineen, do not be like that person who betrays his master's trust. Remember, the power Allah has given you is temporary. The angel of death is standing at your head. The day the horn is blown, the throne will not be able to save you. On that day, only your justice and tears will come to your aid." Caliph Umar bin Abdul Aziz wept profusely reading this letter and reflected this advice fully during his reign. Hasan al Basri's influence was such that despite being the caliph, Umar bin Abdul Aziz considered himself a common student of Hasan al Basri. Hasan al Basri used to say, "The weight of the ink of scholars and the blood of martyrs is equal before Allah." He never sold his knowledge for worldly interests. The governors of Basra repeatedly wanted to give him the post of Qadi, judge, wanted to give him a huge salary, but he rejected it. He used to say, "I cannot even manage serving Allah properly. How will I serve humans?" Once a governor sent him some gold coins as a gift. Hasan al Basri returned the bag of gold coins and told the bearer, "Go tell your master if Hasan wanted the world, he could have earned more wealth than your master with his knowledge. But Hasan wants the hereafter." Another instructive aspect of his life was his humility. Despite being such a great scholar, he always considered himself small. Once a man said to him, "You are much better than us." Hasan al Basri said, "Beware, do not say such things. It may be that Allah has hidden some secret sin of mine, which is why you love me. If the stench of my sins were to come out, none of you would sit beside me." He often said, "I do not consider anyone other than myself worthy of being given advice. But Satan wants me to stop giving advice so that people go astray. So despite my own unworthiness, I speak of Allah to people." There was a special arrangement for women in his gathering as well. The famous Sufi Saint Rabia Basri, rahimahullah, of his time also listened to his sermons. Hasan al Basri was fascinated by Rabia Basri's spirituality and love for Allah. He used to say, "There are many friends, wali, of Allah among men, but a lover of Allah like Rabia is rare among women." Once Hasan al Basri and his companions went to Rabia Basri's house. There they saw Rabia Basri breaking her fast with a piece of dry bread. Seeing this scene, Hasan al Basri cried and understood that for those who have known Allah, there is no difference between the kingdom of the world and dry bread. Hasan al Basri's entire life was a living struggle. On one hand, he was answering the atheists and misguided sects. On the other hand, he was protesting the injustice of rulers. And again, he was showing common people the path of self-purification. His days were spent in fasting and nights in prostration. His neighbor was a Jew. Dirty water from that Jew's house would leak into Hasan al Basri's house. Hasan al Basri cleaned that dirty water for 20 long years, but never complained to that Jewish neighbor. After 20 years, when he fell ill, the Jew came to visit him and, seeing the water stain on the wall, understood the real incident. The Jew asked in amazement, "O Imam, you bore this trouble given by me for 20 years?" Hasan al Basri smiled and said, "My prophet spoke of the rights of the neighbor. I feared that if I complained, you might feel hurt." Hearing this, the Jew cried out aloud and accepted Islam immediately. This was Hasan al Basri, whose character was a realistic reflection of the Quran. Coming in contact with him, stone would turn into gold. He taught that Islam is not the name of praying in the mosque only. Islam is the beauty of behavior, a mountain of patience and an ocean of humility. Every life has an end. just as the sun spreads light all day and sets in the western sky at the end of the day, so too the time for departure drew near for this great man who had illuminated the Ummah all his life by warning of hell and showing the path to paradise. It was the year 110 Hijri. Hasan Al Basri was then bent with the weight of old age, about 88 years old. But though physical strength decreased, his fervor of faith and the sharpness of his tongue did not decrease a bit. A few days before death, he fell ill. The news of his illness spread through the city of Basra like lightning. Crowds of people, students and admirers started gathering in front of his house. Everyone understood that perhaps the brightest star was about to fall from the sky of Basra today. Lying on his deathbed, he did not stop advising people. When his students were sitting around him, he looked at them and said in a weak voice, "Do not consider the world very big, because the beginning of the world is with crying and the end is with destruction. The time in between is merely a test." As he was groaning in the pain of death, his face was surprisingly calm. A student asked, "O Imam, how is your condition at this moment?" He smiled mildly and said, "I am preparing for a journey on a path I have never walked before. I am preparing to lie on a bed, the grave, where I have never slept before. And I am going to stand before a judge, before whom no excuse works." It was a Friday in the month of Rajab, Jumu'ah, the best day of the week. Just after the Jumu'ah prayer, his soul left this mortal body and traveled to the proximity of his beloved Lord. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Indeed we belong to Allah, and indeed to him we return. As soon as the news of his death spread, a shadow of grief descended upon the entire city of Basra. It seemed as if the sky and air cried out. Shops closed, the noise of the market stopped. Only one sentence was on everyone's lips. Today, Hasan Al Basri is no more. Today, the Ummah has become an orphan. The scene of his funeral was an unforgettable event in the history of Islam. His funeral prayer was scheduled to be held after the Asr prayer. The Jame Mosque of Basra and the vast field surrounding it became filled to the brim with people. The people of Basra had never seen such a huge sea of people before. Rich and poor, ruler and subject, white and black, forgetting all differences. Everyone stood in one row that day. Everyone's eyes were tearful. After the funeral prayer, when his body was being taken towards the grave, people became so desperate with emotion that they were falling over each other just to touch the funeral bier once. That day, an event occurred in Basra, which is rare in the pages of history. The crowd at the funeral and the intensity of people's grief were so high that the Asr congregation could not be held in the central Jame Mosque of Basra that day, because, starting from the Imam of the mosque to the Muazzin and common worshippers, everyone had become busy with Hasan Al Basri's funeral and burial rites. In the history of Islam, this is an unprecedented event where the congregation of a city's main mosque was stopped due to the death of one person. This proves how deep a seat he had taken in the hearts of the people. People did not just love him as a scholar, they accepted him as their spiritual father. When everyone was leaving after the burial, one of his beloved students was crying profusely, standing beside the grave. He was saying, "O Abu Sa'id, you left us and went away. Now who will show us the path of truth? Who will show us the fear of hell?" That night, many people in Basra saw Hasan Al Basri in their dreams. One man saw in a dream that Hasan Al Basri was sitting in a huge garden of paradise, and his face was bright like the full moon. The man asked, "O Imam, how has Allah treated you?" He replied, "My Lord has forgiven me and granted me such blessings, which no eye has seen, no ear has heard." Hasan Al Basri, rahimahullah, passed away, but he left behind a massive legacy. He did not leave behind dinars or dirhams. He left behind his timeless words, his written letters, and thousands of students who carried the torch of Islam in later times. After his death, the famous Muhaddith and dream interpreter Muhammad ibn Sirin, rahimahullah, said, "Today such a person has departed from the world, the likes of whom we will not see again. He was the Siddiq, truthful one of our era. although there were some differences of opinion between Ibn Sirin and Hasan Al Basri. Ibn Sirin was so grief-stricken at Hasan's death that he himself passed away a few days later. Hasan Al Basri's life is a huge lesson for us. He taught how to speak the truth, even while in the corridors of power. He taught how to live like a poor man, even amidst mountains of wealth. His life reminds us that this world is not our real address. Our real address is beneath that soil, where we must go alone. He used to say, "O son of Adam, seeing the one carrying your funeral bier, do not think he is carrying someone else. Rather think it is you lying on that bier, and you have been given a chance to return for a few days. Now think, having returned, what deeds would you do?" Today, even after 1400 years, hearing the name of Hasan Al Basri makes the heart of a believer tremble. His advices still awaken our dying faith today. That famous quote of his still whispers in the wind, "The world is a corpse, and people are like dogs who are fighting over this corpse. If you want the world, you have to fight with the dogs. And if you want the hereafter, let the world remain as it is." Dear audience, this life story of Hasan Al Basri is not any ordinary story. It is a mirror. Looking into this mirror, we see our own ugly faces. We see how worldly minded we have become. Today, taking lessons from Hasan Al Basri's life, can we not change our lives a little? Can we not shed our tears for the fear of Allah instead of shedding them for the world? Before the call of death comes, let us prepare, because once the call comes, not even a second will be found. May Allah grant us all the ability, tawfiq, to live a truthful, God-fearing, and hereafter-oriented life like Hasan Al Basri, rahimahullah.